joining us. We are starting the evening with a budget workshop. Tonight we will be starting that meeting separately and ending that meeting, and then we'll jump on to our official City Commission meeting, but we'll all stay logged on to the same system. So I'm going to ask our City Clerk to call roll for this budget workshop, please.
Commissioner Abraham?
Present.
Commissioner McElroy? Commissioner Watkins? Commissioner Wilson? Here. Mayor Harless?
I'm present and here. And Commissioner Wilson, would you mind leading us in the invocation?
Sure. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to be together tonight to review our city's future, and please be with all of us that are in need of prayer and need of a special care, and those traveling and those who have been impacted by everything with the COVID-19. So please be with us tonight and guide us as we make wise decisions. Thank you for your love and care. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. And let's all stand for the pledge, please. Or try to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Are you guys with me?
Which is stand.
Okay.
One nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
I think I had a moment. I don't know what happened. My feet's not good. Okay. We are going to continue on with our budget workshop, and I think I'm going to turn it over to the city manager for this portion.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that. Basically, what we have here is just kind of very similar to what we did last year with a few modifications. One, of course, this is COVID-19 style, so it's virtual. Instead of all staying together, we'll be here going through this. We have in front of us the agenda. As you can see, we'll do the introduction just momentarily. Then we'll jump into the spotlight to kind of highlight from a 30,000-foot level what the proposed budget for FY21 looks like. Then we're going to have John kind of break down the working fund summary, so kind of look at all the funds that we have for operations for the year. And then we'll do a comparison compared to last year's revised budget. And then we'll look at the general fund exploration. We'll see how it compares to last year's as well, compared to the actual, or actually not the actual, but compared to the adopted budget from last July 1st. And then we'll look at the investment fund. Myself and Michelle will kind of go through that. And we'll look at the grant and aid program. Basically, that's a new program we started this year. We're going to be able to take a peek at what that looks like. And then we'll have a time to kind of look back at the plan for a 6-month evaluation of the revenue assumptions, and John will kind of explain that a little bit. With that being said, if there's no questions, we'll jump into the introduction. The workshop itself, again, is really just an informal meeting, just kind of for us to be able to talk about what the proposed budget looks like from the staff's perspective, to get the Board of Commissioners' input. We've had a great opportunity this year to really do a wonderful process, even throughout this pandemic. The schedule began back in January, and we've stayed to the schedule. I'm very proud of that. In fact, if you look at the proposed schedule compared to now, we're only just about a week or two off, but we're still in line to be able to get the budget adopted in a timely manner prior to the June 30th deadline. So we're really excited about that. One other thing that we were excited about this year was the amount of collaboration we had between all the different department directors, as well as the administrative team, and also the finance team. A lot of work went into this, and of course the feedback that we had from each of the elected officials too this year as well really helped to put this budget together. For the purposes of tonight's meeting, as I mentioned before, we'll kind of take a look at what's in the budget, look at all the different funds, and then also look at the way we're going to spend the money as far as it comes to the grant and aid project, and kind of take a peek at that. But just keep in mind, the proposed budget tonight is balanced. So whenever you have a balanced budget with your revenues and your expenditures, if we add something to it, that means we need to take something away from it to keep it in balance, but we can kind of work through that as we go. Public comments. We did make this available for the public to participate. This is a workshop that we do conduct in the public, so the public can kind of view this, and it also gives them an opportunity to make comments. But my understanding is that we did not receive any public comment cards. Is that right, City Clerk?
That's correct.
Okay. So for that portion there, of course, we will bring this back. Next steps, we will bring it back to the Board of Commissioners on June 9th for the first reading. So in between there and now, if you guys hear comments from your constituents and you want to make sure that we consider that for the budget, please let us know. And then after that first reading of the ordinance on the 9th, we'll bring it back for approval. But my understanding is that approval night is the primary night, June 23rd. And I was told that past practice has dictated that we did not hold Board of Commission meetings on election night. So if the board directs us to, we can change that date. Do you have a preference on that? Do we go ahead on June 23rd, or do you guys want to push it back to the 24th, the day after?
I think we might as well push it back so more people can watch and participate.
24th is fine.
Okay. Very good. So we'll go ahead and make plans then to have the introduction on June 9th. And Madam City Clerk, if you could just make note that we're going to do a call meeting on the 24th then. All right. Any questions before we jump into the spotlight? All right, we'll move on down to the budget spotlight. A lot of this we did share with the elected officials during our individual meetings that we have, so a lot of things you'll see on here have not changed, but the theme for the year was and still is budget in place. That was our comptroller, Audra Herndon, brought that up. I thought that was a very telling theme for the year, making sure that we kind of take care of the projects that we have ongoing, as well as meeting the strategic plan initiatives, as well as making sure that we stand up our personnel. So that's the theme, budget in place. We kind of carried that throughout all of our budget meetings. As you can see, number 2, based upon the medical recession that we're in right now, we are projecting a 10% decrease in our major revenue sources. This is going to directly impact our general fund and the investment fund. The proposed general fund portion of the budget is an $85,000 decrease from last year's original budget, which is just almost $36 million. The proposed investment fund portion of the budget was $5,113,560, which is 15% less than last year's original budget. And there's a couple things that kind of went into play there. One, of course, the 10% decrease for the investment fund monies, but you will look at that a little bit more as we dig into that fund. But also, two, the amount of cash carryover. We brought some cash in from FY19 into FY20 and used it, so that cash is, of course, been spent up on projects, planned expenditures, so we have less money to use in FY21. The budget does include all of our annual debt requirements, whether that be from the general fund or the investment fund. All the debt monies we have to pay, whether that be principal and interest, are included in this proposed budget. And then I'll let Michelle jump in here at number 6.
All right, so I'm going to walk through some of the personnel-related items, and we have a little bit of projects we'll get into. So first of all, starting with number 6, the annual pension contributions are remaining flat for this fiscal year. These are the rates that we get from the state, and there was a potential for an increase of up to 12%. By those rates remaining flat, that saved us about $800,000, so we're very happy to see that those rates were flat. On number 7, the proposed budget does contain the 2.5% COLA increase that's contractually obligated for our firefighter and police unions, as well as the non-represented employees, and a 2% increase as contractually obligated for the AFSCME group. This budget does have a hiring freeze for the fiscal year, as well as a freezing of merit increases. And so the approach here is that the positions that were vacant during the budget development are frozen. So positions that are currently filled will be backfilled as they're vacated. Also, we are instructing supervisors to continue their evaluations and, put in, basically submit the request for merit. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but when we get into the 6-month look back and see how revenues are doing, we hope to start to thaw this freezing of positions and merit pay. So that would be something that we hope will not be frozen for the entire year. It just depends on what our revenues do. And then on number 9, this proposed budget, this is something that we are proud of, still does include significant amount of funding for our current capital projects and some new purchases. We also did work to make sure that this budget does reflect the initiatives and the priorities in the city's strategic plan. So you'll remember when we had the retreat in January, we talked about the different initiatives and action items in the strategic plan. We brought them forward to review at the commission level in March, and then when the coronavirus situation hit, we did not end up bringing it forward for adoption, and so the time frame we're looking for that is when we can start to have potentially in-person meetings, so maybe July, August time frame for adoption. One thing I did want to note on the strategic plan, we have 37 action items, 18 of which were the win or the what's important now, the highest priorities. This budget still does, still does fund about 17 of those. And so there is one item that we're proposing to move to kind of the what's important later, and that is hosting a multicultural event. Of the remaining 19 action items, 14 are continuing, and 5 will be moved to the what's important later category. So this budget still does reflect the priorities as much as we could that the commission gave us earlier in the year. And we'll get into those a little bit in more detail when we get into the investment fund summary.
The budget itself still does meet our threshold of a proposed 12% reserve for the general fund. So basically what that means is that we identify what the proposed budget expenditures will be for the general fund, and then 12% of that we'll set back in cash in reserve. So even though we're despite being in a medical recession, we're still setting money back in the budget for actually to be utilized 12% reserves. It helps us with cash flow issues, as well as making sure that there's a catastrophe that occurs even worse than this. There's money that we have to be able to take care of the residents we're sworn to serve. The proposed budget also includes measured departmental division budget cuts to actually budget in place. And again, I know I've said it before, this is truly a collaborative effort where we wanted to make sure that we recognize each leadership team member for their help, because they really did embrace the spirit of the budget in place mentality, making sure that we stood strong behind Team Paducah, and they brought cuts to the table. They were very creative, and it really helped out as we went through the budget process. And also, I want to give a good kudos into the entire finance team, but primarily I want to thank John and Audra for doing such a wonderful job. It's been a lot of work, and they're really good at what they do, and I'm proud to be on their team. The proposed budget includes money allocated for our newly created grant and aid program, and we'll see that here in just a little bit. It also has no projected property tax increase for rates. So basically, the last 2 years, we've recommended to this body to allow us to take the 4% on top of the compensatory. I'm going to mess that up. The compensatory rate. But this year, we're not recommending taking that 4% increase in the tax rates. So that will actually provide hopefully some relief for our residents as well in FY21. But we will be coming back, of course, in FY22 and probably seeking that if the economy stabilizes. That'll be, of course, FY22's budget discussion, not FY21's budget discussion. John, did I capture that correctly? Okay, he's shaking his head yes. That means yes.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move forward there. And then the proposed budget does utilize a strategy of utilizing unreserved cash, general fund cash balances to help us balance the budget. So really what we did was we stood behind the team, and we're still able to do a lot of projects that were embraced by this Board of Commissioners, and try to get things, continue to keep up with the projects we have. And what we're proposing is using $1.5 million to balance, out of our unreserved general fund cash. Also, in addition to that, looking at utilizing $500,000 of reserves out of our debt service fund to balance. So basically we had reserves in the debt service fund, being able to bring those forward and utilize those to balance the budget. And then the last stratagem there is to utilize nearly $790,000 out of the radio fund to help pay for the city's portion of our 911 annual subsidy. So the money that we pay in towards the 911 for that annual operations, we're proposing to use that from the radio fund instead of the general fund. And you'll see that difference when John breaks down the general fund, what that looks like. But by doing that, that takes that $790,000 hit away from the general fund and allows us to balance. And I think that's the spotlight. Any questions before we dig in deeper? Okay, I'll turn it over to John.
I have a question. Well, not a question, a comment. A question. So, can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so those reserves that we have, once we deplete those, obviously, it's going to take us a minute to build that back up, right?
Yes, it will.
Okay, so I just, I mean, it took us a minute to get to where we are, and that's a wonderful safety net to have. Just thinking out loud, I guess.
No, you raise a great point, and it's good to identify that, Commissioner Abraham, because it does take time to build up those reserves. The proposed budget does still maintain a 12% reserve for us, which gives us a good fiscal cushion. This would be what was on top of that. So it's good to have that money there for cases just like this. That way you don't have to tie into sacrifice projects or sacrifice personnel for something that could be a 12-month to 18-month recession. So what we're trying to do is say that time is on our side. You know, we want to utilize reserves that we have, and then once we utilize reserves, as you said, just like a savings account at your house or at your home, once you spend it, it's gone. And then what we'll have to do is intentionally build those back up again over time.
Okay, you ready to move? Is my audio coming through okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, this, what you see up on the screen there, this is a summary of all of our working or operation funds. We have in excess of 20 of those. The one that everybody wants to focus on is the very first line there, the general fund. And then you can see lots of different types below that. They have either specialized or required by federal or state government, or something special that we locally want to keep track of. First column is the name of the fund. If you move to your right, you see the next three columns. That's what actually took place in 17, 18, and then 19. Moving further to the right, to the columns that are headed up FY 2020, that's in yellow. At first, the column that's headed actual, that's what we literally have incurred so far through I believe that's the 21st of May, just to give you a perspective where we're at. And then the column to the right of that is the revised budget, not the original, but the revised budget. And I'll explain why that's important in just a second. Then as you move to the right, there's another column called FY 2021 proposed budget. That's the budget for next year, what we're talking about. The last column to the right is a mathematical function, difference between the revised budgets of 20, the current year, versus what's proposed coming up. The difference between a revised and original budget is this. Focus on the general fund first, so this will make sense, because some of these you'll look at that and you'll say that doesn't make sense. Well, I'll try to help it to make sense, especially in the general fund, because we will drill down into that. When we first started out, there were a number of things we did not consider in the budget, in the general fund in particular, and one of which was a $1.5 million build grant match. That's why the revised budget is higher than the original. And in addition to that, we had to give the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers some cash. I think it was to the tune of $688,000. So that between those two, that's over $2 million difference. Now those are one-time things. That won't happen. Hopefully, it won't happen again, unless we're getting some big grants. That will account for why it's so much greater than the original budget. Now, as you can see, that first row, general fund, compare the revised to the proposed. It's actually going to go down over 6%. Next line is the rental fund, which is really an extension of the general fund. That's where we keep track of all of the property that the city owns and rents. A lot of our property we don't charge rent, but these are the ones that we do. The line below that, again, is an extension of the general fund. That's the radio depreciation fund the city manager mentioned a while ago. Instead of, because we're so short of revenues this year for the general fund, we will one time next year use, I believe Jim said, city manager said nearly $790,000 from the radio fund for 911 subsidy instead of taking it out of the general fund, because the general fund didn't have the cash, but the radio fund did. Next line down, you'll all be very familiar with that. That's the 911 fund. That's basically flat, slightly down. As you know, the revenues in that account continue to drop, but the expenditures don't. Next line down, the MAP fund. That's municipal aid program, the road fund, some people will call it. The reason that's dropping is because the gas taxes are going to be down. We've already been told what those are going to be. Hopefully they won't drop anymore. Next line down, again, it too is an extension of the general fund. We call it the investment fund. We started it in 2005. And the reason it's down as much as it is because its revenue source is exclusively payroll tax. It only has one form. It only has one revenue source versus the general fund, which has a variety of different revenue sources. So that's why it's down a bit more. Next line below that is the court award fund. When our police officers go out and do arrests and they take cash and our properties we sell, we use the money to do further arrests and drug-related activities. Next line below that is debt service fund. That is the principal and interest that we anticipate paying for our debt issues. As you can see, that's gone up 20%, and that is driven directly by the $20 million bond issue that we floated in January. The next line down is the bond fund itself. That's where we actually appropriate money out to spend. Now, to spend the money, we have to appropriate it, so that's why that has gone up so substantially. Again, this was driven by the 2020 GOB we floated in January. Next line down is the solid waste fund, and that you're all familiar with that. You know, we gave our customers a break in April and May, and then because we felt like comfortable enough to do that. Next year that goes back to normal, hopefully, and you can see over time that expenditure is pretty much the way it was. Now we did take it down and tightened up a little bit. You can see it went down about 7%. Next line below that is the Civic Center. That's just to account for expenditures that take place in the Civic Center rental unit. Okay. The next couple lines, Section 8, that actually is run out of the Housing Authority, but they reimburse us. We pay for expenditures, and so that's doesn't cost the city itself any money. This is where we have to appropriate the funds to do that. Next line down is the transient boat. As you know, that's run primarily from fuel sales, rental sales, and such as that. Unfortunately, we may see a drop this fall with the loopers coming through because the travel may be down substantially. We don't know that. So the expenses, unfortunately, continue to run on, and we had some major expenditures scheduled for next year to make the thing work. The next line is the fleet maintenance fund. That's where we keep track of the expenditures that we use to pay for or to fix our rolling stock. And these expenditures are come from primarily the solid waste and the general funds. Next line down is a fleet lease trust fund. Nearly $1 million is slightly down, but that nearly $2 million, that's primarily made up of a fire truck pumper in excess of $500,000 next year we're anticipating to acquire, along with I think it's 7 to 8 police cruisers. That makes up the vast majority of that. Again, this is money that we have put aside for many, many years. It's coming out of our savings account. So like at home, if you were to, most people don't do this, but if you were to save your money up and once you have cash to buy the vehicle, that's exactly what we've been doing since 1998. We put the money to the side and we buy it. We don't borrow money to do this. The next line, actually the next two lines, one is the general insurance fund. That's liability, police liability, workers' comp, things of that nature. And the next one after that is health insurance fund. That's to cover both for medical, vision, and dental for our employees. Employees pay for some of this. the general fund, solid waste fund, fleet maintenance fund pay for the rest of it. And while we're talking about that, both of these lines and several other accounts up here, they are actual, what some people will refer to as double accounting, because not only are they going to show up as an appropriation in the general fund, the solid waste fund, maybe the investment fund, different funds, they'll also show up here. And the reason we want them to show up here is we can keep track of how much we literally spend on health insurance, how much we literally spend on general type of insurance issues and to repair our vehicles and things of that nature. So it does come in here twice. So the bottom line you can see is $85 million. That's really, some of that's accounted for twice. Okay, the next line down, the next two lines actually, the AEPF pension fund and the PFPF pension fund, those are old pension funds that locally are run, not through the state. The first one there, the AEPF, that accounts for two people. Those are non-hazard duty folks that retired probably 35, 40 years ago, or their spouses. And the next line below that, that's about 38 folks that are still in the police and fire pension plan. Again, that could be the actual retiree or their spouses. And the very last line, under other trust funds, that's primarily the Broyles estate, and that's money, as you may remember, I can't remember when we got the money, but it's been a number of years ago. The Broyles family left a lot of money for the city over in the community foundation, and we take we leave the corpus, but we take the earnings off of it, and for many, many, many years, we've used that to match locally to draw down the Greenway grants. And that's what they intended for it to be used for, was for building the Greenway Trail, and that's worked out marvelously well. It does not affect the general fund in any way. And then you can see the bottom line there, $85 million. Does anybody have any questions? I know that's fast, but this is just an overview really of all of our funds.
I have a quick question. Are we going to talk a little bit more about the health insurance fund later with personnel? I know we had discussed in the history, I guess, it's before my time, there was actually a risk manager who was had a position that would help us drive the cost down of our health insurance. I'm assuming that's why we see this fund going up. It's one assumption why we see it is because we're not actually intentionally tackling that issue.
Right. Let me say a couple things, and City Manager, if you want to chime in too, or Audra. On the health insurance fund, it actually should be relatively flat there and dropping a little bit. What we do is we anticipate the worst case situation here. If you go to the left, you can see like in 17 over there, it says $3 million. Go to the right, it was 3.3, 3.3, and then so far we're at $2.5 million. It will probably end up being at 3.2 or 3 million. It depends on the year. It depends on who gets sick and how long they're ill. That's what this accounts for now. The risk manager, that person would help us to drop the cost of the general liability insurance types and work comp, things of that nature. And that's why I think that's probably what you meant. That's why that's driven up a little bit. Over the years, you can see it's gone up a number of times. And I can remember when we hired a risk manager many years ago, it took us a year or two, but it had a huge impact. And so that's one of those positions. I know the city manager has said that when we unfreeze and have an opportunity to do it, this is a position that it's worth its weight in gold. It will pay for itself, and it will also help protect our employees.
Yeah, that risk manager position is not on the books currently. We have not created it again. Is that what you're saying? So it's not going to be in this year's budget.
It's currently not appropriated for, but when we do the 6-month look back, that may be something we need to look at.
Okay.
It's one of the 19 frozen general fund employees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can see that trend, Madam Mayor, if you look at the general insurance fund. On that trend line, you can see 1.1, 1.2, 1.25, 1.25, 1.4, 1.4 as it climbs. That's what we're trying to do is stop that climb. Reverse the trend.
Correct.
Now, not only will it help us to save money, if you don't raise taxes, you've got to cut expenses, and this is one way to do that. But it also creates a culture of safety, which is really important to us too.
That's right.
It saves lives and saves limbs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Any other questions? If not, we'll go to the more exciting fund. I find it. There it is. Okay. Okay, this is the general fund. This is what everybody talks about when we talk about budgets, and we'll spend a little bit of time here. I know we're very limited. It's already 5 o'clock, and I think we have to be done in the next 29 minutes, so I will fly through this as best I can, but kind of give you a 30,000-foot view of this. Again, this one is designed, you can see all the departments on the far left, and to the right, 17, 18, and 19 actual, so you can see a trend. The next line, next column over, there's 3 columns, all under yellow. You can see actual where we have incurred expenditures so far through the 21st of May. Move to the right, you see the revised budget. We talked about that a little a minute ago. And then the original budget. So just real quick look, if you wouldn't mind, look at the column that's called 2020 revised. Go to the bottom, and you can see it says 38.2 million. And then move to the right, and you can see the original was 35.9 million, almost 36 million. Again, the difference between these two is driven by the additional funding we needed to put in, 1.5 million for the build grant match, and nearly $700,000 for cash for the flood wall for the Army Corps of Engineers. That's why there's a difference there. Now, when we do a comparison, the math function in that column to the far right, we're going to compare proposed 21 original, which that will become, versus the 2020 original. So that's why you see some ratios will be different, but the numbers should be exactly the same. So as you can see, administration is well behaved, and they basically were flat. Next line down, my favorite department of all the departments is the finance department. And unfortunately, we got caught during the freeze like everyone else of the 19. We have one position that's frozen up there. That's what drives that one down. The next line down, information technology. Let's take a few seconds and talk about this a little bit. That looks like a huge increase, and it is, but this is what it is. As you may recall, back in January and February, we had some bad actors, and so now we have to pay about $45,000 a year to have somebody watch over us. That's a piece of that. And then, as you may recall, we've been, for the last, I guess, seems like 20 years, but it's been the last 5 years on Munis. We've been integrating this new system into the city's all of our software citywide, and that cost has actually been charged for many years to a project, which you don't see here. And so it's our intention to bring over a period of 3 years, 1/3 of it each year. So this year that cost is going to go up by about $105,000. Next year it'll be $210,000. Next year it'll be $320,000-ish or so. That's why that's gone up. It's not. Those are things that we're already doing. We're just simply reprogramming and putting them where they need to be because it's an operation function is what it is. Next line down, city clerk is basically flat. Line below that is planning, and planning, I believe that is, we have a frozen senior planner in there. The next 2 lines, the police and fire, they make up a little over 50% of the general fund. They both are up. PD went up 5.5. Fire's up 3. Those are primarily driven by the recently agreed to last February bargaining unit adjustments. As you know, we've tried to become more competitive with agencies of our like size in our area, and so that's primarily what's driving that. Now, fire also has an additional $30,000, which was moved from parks in here to take care of mowing and maintaining and managing city-owned lots. Now, the line below that, Public Works and Parks, this Public Works basically is flat. Now, it's flat, but it's also inherited through the reorganization about 3 positions that came out of Parks, and as you can see, Pool is down about 8%. Pool's not down. Parks is down, driven by we're not running the pool. There's a bunch of rec programs that aren't going to happen. A number of positions that came out of there went to Public Works and things of like nature. I know I'm going through these fast, so stop me if you need to. The next couple lines, Cable Authority, these are small agencies. Human Rights is flat, literally flat. Cable Authority is dropping down because, as you know, for many years we've been negotiating with our new franchise fee through Comcast, and we no longer need to have a legal expense, and that's what's driving that one down. And then go down to engineering, virtually flat. Human Resources, and that says in RI. That RI is truncated. That's risk manager. That's where we used to have the risk manager. That we just haven't ever changed the name of that department. It's actually human resources. And then below that, interfund transfers. Again, interfund transfers is down substantially between the current year and next year, driven by the fact that we are not going to use general fund money next year to fund the 911 operation. We're going to use radio fund one time, and so that's what's driving that down nearly 30% in that line item. And you could go to the very bottom line, third from the bottom actually, and you can see, as the city manager pointed out earlier, we're $85,000 down, it's almost flat, 0.2% down. And then we went ahead and compared it to projected revenues of 34.3 million versus the appropriations, and that that 1.569 million, that's going to be taken care of by our unobligated fund reserves in the general fund. That's how we got this thing to balance. I know it's really fast. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we'll try to go back and address them.
All right, here now we'll move on to the investment fund. The investment fund, as John talked about before, is basically comprised of just all payroll tax, and basically the money comes into the investment fund and we use it for different functions or focuses, if you will. Number one is economic development, and then we have in the projections for FY21, we have GPED funded at the 250 as proposed, and we have this year something that wasn't in there last year, but came upon us last year, but it's still not been spent out, is the Sprocket grant match for $200,000 for their grant with KEDFA. So we did capture that to make sure if they get that approved by KEDFA, we're able to help them out with that wonderful addition out there at the Coca-Cola plant. And then you'll see their debt services, as I mentioned before, are all captured. You can scroll down, Audra. You have in there the TIF. We have $40,000 set aside in there, and that's one thing. That's an area too that we have to confirm is right. Our current contract is $4,000 a month. We did confirm that, but we just don't know what the end game is going to be. We will need monitoring after we get it up and running, but we might be able to trim that down and move some of that around still. And I did not get back to check that out. And that came from our conversations we had with the elected officials a couple weeks ago. We do have money in there for the roof stabilization program. That's another thing that was talked about at $50,000, and maybe moving that to a different function. And again, I didn't get confirmation on that. I did talk to Katie Axt about that, and she said she was going to talk to Tamara about that. Where to best fit that money in as far as to help our downtown. But right now we have it in the roof stabilization program. We did capture in there as a carve out the $125,000 for the community scholarship program, and we did have in there which gave us $375,000 for the remaining outside agencies. So even with those carve outs, as I mentioned up there before, we have $375,000 that we'll be able to provide for our grant and aid program. We see in there also the Teletech property tax bills, and then of course audit expenses. And for the community development, we have in there demolitions. It's still at the $100,000. Again, I know we had conversations before whether or not this is the year to kind of reduce those and use those monies elsewhere. But right now we still have it in there as demolition. So if you guys want to give us guidance on that, we'll do as you will. And then the weeds and debris, that's to help with the grass mowings. It's going to be transferred over to the general fund. And then lien recoveries, we kept that at 50 as was last year as well, just to help us with our lien recovery foreclosures. And that's the community development portion of it. And then Michelle will talk about the capital projects.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead with the infrastructure and capital improvements. Starting off, we have the street resurfacing program funded at $250,000. We also have the sidewalk rehab at $100,000, and this will really focus on pedestrian connectivity. You know, one of the high priorities of the strategic plan was focusing on pedestrian safety improvements. And so this funding, you know, I mentioned earlier how we have a lot of ongoing capital projects. One great example of it is the 25th Street project with Sidewalk Street and Stormwater, that we received some state funding, and then we have a portion we'll contribute out of these funds. Additionally, stormwater was identified as the WIN initiative, which is one of the, you know, which is the highest priority in the strategic plan. So we are funding that at the $250,000 level, and this will allow for the inspections, cleaning, and television of lines. And then you also, you know, further down, we'll talk about a major flood wall project that is ongoing, and that's another major stormwater project we have. The wall-to-wall maintenance contract will continue. This is for our flood wall murals. In the pink, as the city manager mentioned, we are meeting all of our debt obligations. We have a city facilities maintenance project we're proposing to fund that at $188,000. This is part of our, you know, regular business to maintain what we have, and also aligns with the strategic plan and the facilities maintenance item we have. The software upgrade, that's the Munis and the EnerGov project, that's staying flat at $270,000. And then there at the bottom, we have that major flood wall project. This is working with the Army Corps of Engineers, and that is our cash match. We also have 2 riverfront projects that we're working with FEMA on. One is a mitigation project on the riverfront, and the other is actually money that we're setting aside to work on the dredging of the sediment pile out by the showroom lounge, and we're also working with FEMA on that. So that's a total of 2.9 for infrastructure and capital. So we have a lot of big projects, you know, still moving this upcoming year.
Jim,
So,
when we
go ahead.
had our meeting, we had talked about the dredging project and was curious if we were going to be able to utilize the full $400,000 in this fiscal year. Did you ever get a chance to talk to Rick about that?
I did. He wanted to follow up with his sources prior to being able to commit. 'Cause what he didn't want to do is say we wouldn't take that amount, but then we need that amount. We didn't have it. We did. If you noticed, you might not have noticed, but we were able to utilize some of the riverfront FEMA mitigation project match. It used to be higher than 60. We got that down to 60 because we didn't need all that this year. But the dredging project, that's moving pretty fast right now, and in fact, we'll be having a meeting, an executive session probably here soon to kind of talk about that project in more in depth, as far as like potential litigation as well as lease options or long-term lease options.
Great. Okay. And then my other question for you, and I'll share this with the commissioners because we weren't in the same meetings together, obviously, and that was in relation to the demolitions. I think someone mentioned that as you were going through there. You know, when I took office, I don't remember if it was the first year or the second year, but we raised the amount we were giving to demolition significantly. I think we doubled it. You all might remember that. And one of the things I observed was I value the judgment of our team a lot, but I did observe that we were seeing a lot of homes that probably were rehab worthy torn down. And now, the flip side of that coin is that you have to have people who are willing to do the rehab. Otherwise, it's an issue, a safety issue, of course. But I'm just kind of curious, you know, and maybe it's a matter of our team telling us, you know, how many more demos are out there that they want to see happen, that they think are on the list, and maybe just kind of taking a pulse check for a moment to see if in this fiscal year that we need funds to do other things with, or we need to make sure, you know, our reserves are built back up, whatever that looks like, that maybe we put a little bit of a hold on being so aggressive with demos. I just really wanted to have that conversation with the team and the commissioners.
Hey, Chief Kyle, you want to opine on that? Chief Kyle, are you there?
I see him.
You're muted, Chief Kyle.
His audio's not working.
Well, I will speak for him, I guess. As I mentioned before during our conversation, Madam Mayor, that they always push for trying to get more because they don't have enough money to do what they believe needs done in a fiscal year. So if we give them $100,000, they can spend $100,000. If we give them 50, they'll spend 50. If we give them 200, they'll spend 200. That's what they've been trying to do. But they were working on the directive as trying to meet the Board of Commissioners' expectations to be able to take down the the unsafe, dilapidated properties.
And can jump in here.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that is because we hear from folks in the community and neighborhoods about these eyesores in their neighborhood, close to their property, driving their property value down. And so we're like, okay, well, we can step that up. So you give those dollars to the appropriate department. As far as those houses or those properties being rehabbed, I mean, is there a criteria that our guys go in prior to the wrecking ball hitting it, deciding if this is good for rehab, or are we giving them those direct? Do they have those type of orders in hand? Look at that and look at that where you measure it visually or whatever they use to determine if a house or structure is beyond repair to tear it down. I guess that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, right now, what we started up, that's a great question, Commissioner. What we started up about, I'd say 12 months ago maybe, was we have Tamara Tracy goes out with Chief Cherry to look at the residents to see is it salvageable or is it not salvageable. And we really try to work with planning to say, okay, this property potentially doesn't have to come down and can stay. And then so we move on from that. So they kind of come to an agreement what needs to come down due to public safety and what can remain. So that's worked out well for us. But the issue that we're having with those that are remaining is like what Madam Mayor referred to, is we have to have interested parties who want to go in and do something with it or have the capital to do that with those properties and trying to get that program up and running. So basically, I think what we probably have to do is kind of get one side matched up with another side, play matchmaker, if you will.
Okay.
Any other discussions about the investment fund? So do you want us to leave the demolition where it's at as proposed or move that around?
I would say leave it where it is.
Yeah, my proposal was going to be, and again, this depends on how much work we can get done in one fiscal year, was going to be just for this year to cut it in half, add another $50,000 to our stormwater program to get it up and running aggressively, and then we can come back, to the stabilized 100,000, because that's what it was when I got into office, was 100,000 a year. I'm pretty certain for the demo. We went up, doubled it one year, and so just for this year to be able to really get the stormwater televising and cleaning and all those things that came out of that master plan that we need to be doing to get it more aggressively started. Now, Jim and Rick and, people who are smarter than me about that need to tell me, you can't just throw the money at the problem. Will it actually add to what we can accomplish and make a significant impact on what we can get done this year if we do that?
Well, I think the $250 that we have applied towards that lining and television and cleaning is a good amount. So I think that's going to give us a good bang for our buck this year to get us started. But it's going to take more to actually do the the televising, the cleaning. That's going to be what happens this year. The lining is going to be more, and that'll come in the future years. So we'll need more money moving forward.
Okay, so maybe this is not the year to do that.
Jim, we're the $250 won't cover all of the all of the televising and stuff. But that gives a good start. That gives a good start.
That's right.
The other good news that I'm hoping is going to happen is I've been talking to some of our federal elected officials about helping us kind of reduce some of the matches that are we're obligated to for some federal funds that we get. And so, you know, I guess we won't know that before we pass this budget, but that would be a nice icing on the cake, I guess, if we were to get some of those matches either forgiven or reduced or whatever that might look like as a response to COVID. And so in that case, I guess we could use those funds to put into the stormwater plan and make that decision midstream if we had to kind of get a little bit more aggressive with that program. That seems like another option. It's just not guaranteed, obviously.
I think that's a wonderful opportunity for us and very apropos as the rain pours down outside.
Okay, so leave it as is, it sounds like, for now, the demo.
And if you guys have a change of heart before the first reading, let us know. We'll make that switch.
Yeah, and I have another question, too, about the facilities maintenance. I know that we have a assessment that is hopefully close to complete. I know Rick's been working hard with Markham on that. Can you give me an update on that? And if you believe, I'm assuming this is the fund that we're going to draw funds from to respond to that assessment. Obviously, that's not a whole lot of money when you're looking at however many properties we own in the city of Paducah. But can you give us just an update on when we might see that? Will it be before the budget's finished? Or will it be after?
Yes, Madam Mayor, it will be. I wanted to schedule a meeting with Jim to go over those numbers. We actually met with Markham today on the 14 buildings that we have, and they've laid it out where we have like a 1 to 3 year plan and then a 4 to 10 year plan. You know, some things that you may want to look up up front. But on 14 buildings, our youngest building is 39 years old, and they haven't had a whole lot done to them. I know we've spent quite a bit of money on City Hall, but it was more about aesthetics and those kind of things. But there's a lot of buildings that need a lot of work, and I'd like to go over that with the city manager and then prepare something for you all. But yes, the answer to your question is yes, we'll have something that can be considered, but there's some serious numbers in there.
Rick, am I understanding you to say the newest building the city owns is 39 years old?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So again, I guess I'll keep working on some of those matches, maybe getting some relief there. And if we do, maybe we can find some more of those funds to add. I know the firefighters are very concerned about some of their buildings. I know they've mentioned it to all of us, I'm sure. Some of the buildings that they're living in when they're on shift, and I do hate to see this number go down. I know that it was going up when I took office, and there was a lot of maintenance that has been forgotten about over the years. And I know we all learn our lessons. We know that costs more to fix it if we're not maintaining it as it goes along. So I guess we'll just kind of leave this open-ended until we get that report and see what we can do with some of those matching dollars.
It's a great idea. All right, for the sake of time, we'll move on to the grant and aid program. You'll see the changes I made to that based upon the feedback I got from the electeds in our individual meetings. We have carved out money for the animal control contract out of the general fund, the government access television, which we're speaking on tonight, that annual contract, and then the remaining balance of almost $250,000 in the general fund can be used for eligible grants, if you will. The rental fund has the Market House Theater carved out for that 5-year program. This would be year 2 of the 5-year program for their bathroom remodel and their lobby remodel area. And then the investment fund carved out GPED, the Sprocket Grant Match, the Community Scholarship Fund, and the Wall-to-Wall, which gave us $375,000. So basically we have for the year proposed a little bit, about $500 higher than last year, what we gave out to outside agencies is what we called it before, but now we're doing it through a grant and aid program. So very consistent, even though we're in a recession, we're still basically proposing the same as what went out last year. All right, then moving forward then, I'll turn it over to John for the 6-month eval.
Okay, you know, we've been talking about this for several months now with this COVID upon us. We have great hopes that the economy will recover quickly. We don't know that. No one knows that. But the whole idea behind the principle here is that in 6 months, halfway into the next fiscal year, surely by that point in time, we'll have a much better idea of, you know, where we have been. We hope to have a pretty good idea by the end of February, and then any positions that we have currently frozen up, like again the risk manager and others, we can thaw them, and then if we need to add stuff back into do some grant matching, some things we put to the side, some projects we just couldn't do, those kinds of things we'll revisit. We don't have any particular thing in mind. We just are very hopeful that within 6 months that we have been ultra conservative and we just did such a tight job on this that we'll have money everywhere. I don't expect that's going to happen. I hope it does. But at that point in time, we'll come back to the City Commission with ideas on how to, you know, restore some things. But we want to be very careful on how we move forward, because once it's spent, we cannot unspend it. And so that's kind of where we're at.
Well, I'm hopeful that we have some good economic development deals going on. We are moving forward with the new plastics company that's opening. I know I just saw you, Jim, ask about Menards that's opening, so I'm sure some of those revenues, especially the Menards, was not expected in this fiscal year, so that's going to be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, Madam Mayor, we don't have any public participation tonight, so that wraps up the agenda. We only have about 2 minutes to spare for any additional questions.
Commissioners, do you have any follow-up remaining questions before we adjourn? All right, so we are going to adjourn this meeting, but stay on the camera, and then we are going to start our other meeting the same way that we normally do. So I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Did you do it? I couldn't hear it. Uh-oh, Commissioner Abraham has lost his audio.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I had a question before, but I'll wait and ask John. We're good.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, great. All right, meeting adjourned, and I guess we're going to stay streaming. Steve, is that true?
That is correct, Madam Mayor. We'll stay live.
Okay, great. Commissioner Watkins was not able to make to the budget workshop. Do we need to check on him to see if he can get in here with us on this next meeting?
Yep, he just texted me. No, he's not going to make it at all tonight, he said.
Okay.
All right, we got a technical issue on the TV side. It's all broadcasting correctly, but Dan's going to reset his connection, and then I'll tell you whenever he's ready.
Okay. everyone. We are back, and we just had an hour-long budget workshop, and now we are going into our official City Commission meeting, and I'm going to ask the City Clerk to call roll, please.
Commissioner Abraham,
Present.
Commissioner McElroy, Commissioner Watkins,
Present.
Commissioner Wilson,
Present.
Mayor Harless.
Present. And Commissioner Abraham, would you lead us in the invocation, please?
I will. Father, we thank you so much for allowing us to be together. Even though we're not physically together, we are here in spirit. Father, you say in your words that you will keep yours in the midst of turmoil. Father, during this time of this coronavirus, a lot of positive things have happened. Folks are having dinner at home with their kids. Folks are spending more time with their elderly parents. Father, in your word, you said to think on these things that are positive, that are good, that are right. And so, Father, we keep that positive mindset going. As we come out of this, we are going to be much better for it. So we thank you. Even in these trying times, we thank you. These things we ask in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And would you all join me in the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to pull my agenda back up. City Manager, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight?
No, Madam Mayor, there are not.
Okay, and the next up on the agenda is the consent agenda. These items are considered to be routine by the Board of Commissioners and will be enacted by one motion and one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the board member so requests. If no one has anything tonight to remove for discussion, I will ask the City Clerk to read the items recommended for approval, please.
Approved minutes for the May 12th, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Paducah and the May 18th, 2020 and May 20th, 2020 joint called meetings of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Paducah and the McCracken County Fiscal Court. Receive and file documents. Appointment of J.P. Kelly and Kayla Shahady to the Industrial Development Authority to replace Mike Stone and Derwin Ursary, whose terms have expired. These terms shall expire March 25th, 2024. Personnel actions, a municipal order authorizing the mayor to execute any and all documents necessary to accept a coronavirus emergency supplemental funding grant award through the U.S. Department of Justice in the amount of $36,344 to be used by the Paducah Police Department to purchase an unmanned aerial system. A municipal order authorizing the mayor to execute any and all documents necessary to apply for an FY 2019 Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response SAFER grant funded through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, in the amount of $767,836.17 for the hiring of 3 firefighters.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Watkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. And moving into our emergency ordinances, I know, Lindsay, you had passed out the motions. I didn't get a note on who was reading those. Will that be you?
That will be me, yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
A proposed motion of the Board of Commissioners to introduce and adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance approving the termination of the construction contract entered between the City of Paducah and Huffman Construction, LLC, dated May 3rd, 2018, regarding the Flood Pump Station No. 2 rehabilitation project and declaring an emergency to exist. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The City entered into an agreement with Huffman Construction, LLC, dated May 3rd, 2018, relating to the Flood Pump Station No. 2 rehabilitation project. This ordinance terminates the aforesaid agreement due to default and material breach of contract by Huffman Construction, LLC. The effective date of termination shall be the date this ordinance is approved by the City Commission. Pursuant to KRS 83A.060, the City Commission suspends the requirement of a second reading of this ordinance. As grounds, therefore, the City Commission does hereby declare an emergency to exist due to the need to find a replacement contractor immediately in order to complete the project within the required time frame. At present, the pump facility is at 50% at full capacity, and the lead time for ordering replacement pumps is 36 to 40 weeks in advance. Any delay could result in the project time frame being extended by 1 year.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, or any discussion, actually? Okay, if none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Watkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Harless?
Aye. City Clerk, would you read item? Nope, that's it. Okay, great. Thank you so much. We'll move into introductions of ordinances. If you'll read item 3A, please.
A proposed motion of the Board of Commissioners to introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance providing for the closing of a portion of an alley between 1420 Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and 1415 Harrison Street, and the dedication of a new alley between 1400 Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and 1401 Harrison Street, and authorizing the mayor to execute all documents related to same. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The City of Paducah does hereby authorize the closure of a portion of alley between 1420 Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and 1415 Harrison Street, and authorizes, empowers, and directs the mayor to execute a quitclaim deed from the City of Paducah to the property owners in or abutting the public ways to be closed. Further, this ordinance authorizes the dedication of a new alley between 1400 Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and 1401 Harrison Street, and authorizes the mayor to execute all documents relating to same.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, are you on here?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Commission, and City Manager. This is something that Planning Department and our department's been, Engineering Department's been working on jointly. You'll recall this piece of property was previously in the ownership of the Paducah Housing Authority. We picked it up and did some demo on that property, and now we wish to restore it into residential property. I think there'll be 8 lots that will be created. The alley that the 8 lots will be created will face the health park there on 14th Street, and there will be an alley that goes behind those houses. Essentially, there's an improved area there that was used by the Housing Authority when it had residential structures there, and we're just going to make the best use of that. Now, some of these things that have been discussed about quitclaim deeds, we're just squaring the property up so we don't have an irregular shaped piece of property. And the budding property owners, I believe the Joneses and the Scruggs, will be the beneficiaries of just allowing pencil-shaped pieces of property to be joined to their property, and it'll do a nice job of just cleaning those properties up.
Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Oh, someone's clapping. Okay,
Sorry.
I'm gonna move on. Oh.
Just so excited.
Okay, I wonder who it was. All right, I'm gonna ask the city clerk to read item 3B, please.
A proposed motion of the Board of Commissioners to introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance declaring the City of Paducah's intent to annex certain properties lying adjacent to the corporate limits of the City of Paducah, and defining accurately the boundary of said properties to be included within said corporate limits. This ordinance is summarized as follows. An ordinance approving the intent to annex and declaring it desirable to annex certain tracts of property contiguous to the present city limits, located at 1815 Olivet Church Road, 6215 Blandville Road, and 5269 Hinkleville Road, containing 8.6 acres, more or less.
So moved.
Second.
Is Tamara on the line with us?
Madam Mayor, I am taking her place tonight.
Oh, hi, Josh.
So, good evening, Mayor, City Commission, City Manager. This is an intent to annex for 3 properties on the west side of the city. All 3 of them do meet the requirements of KRS 81A 410, which means they are suitable for development without unreasonable delay and urban in nature. 2 of the 3 properties on Olivet Church Road and Blandville Road did request to be annexed into the city, whereas Hinkville Road did not. There you go. The reason that we're asking to annex in the lot on Hinkville Road is to maintain a cohesive development in the regional trade center. Whenever you look at things like signage and ingress and egress and traffic patterns that's going on out there, we would like to continue some unified development instead of curb cuts and signage and basically trying to not recreate Lone Oak Road outside of the city, but to have a more unified development. We expect growth to continue in that area, and I would be glad to answer any questions that you all may have.
Any questions for Josh? No? Okay. Thank you, Josh. All right, next up we have comments from the city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just have a few tonight that are basically both COVID-19 related. One, as was mentioned before, prior to our budget workshop, we are in the process of doing some COVID-19 related modifications to City Hall, preparing for us to be able to receive the public into the public building, looking out for their safety as well as our employee safety. So hopefully we'll be able to complete those modifications by the next few weeks. So we're hoping to be able to open the doors to the public, of course, with restrictions in mid-June. So we're just a couple weeks away from being able to open the doors. That's our plan at this point. And as far as the this body's meetings in the future, we are shooting for July to be able to reconvene in person so we can all be here together, or at City Hall together, if you will. We do have modifications made to the boardroom already to be able to host this, but we're trying to wait until July 1st for the governor's guideline of the 50 people or less. So mainly so we can have gatherings within that room there. We'll also have to make some plans for overflow, though, because when you go back in, it won't look like what it did before. We've had to space off for social distancing, so the seats some seats have been disabled in the rooms. They're kind of spread out in the room, and then we have plexiglass dividers up there for the city clerk, myself, the mayor, and the Board of Commissioners. And then we'll also have a overflow area set up, which we haven't done yet. That's on our to-do list. So changes will be coming, but the good thing is that we're hoping to be able to have our first meeting back in the boardroom in July.
Great news. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any comments from the commissioners tonight? I can't see everybody, so I don't know if you're trying to talk or not.
I don't know.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, with that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Hey, nice. All right. All in favor?
All right.
Aye. All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all so much. Have a good evening.